This video is going to be a short training video on ScreenMeet remote support. In this video, we're going to run a remote support session directly from a Salesforce case. We're going to start the session with recording automatically enabled and in view-only mode. We'll show the customer join flow. We'll demonstrate the annotation and remote control functionality in session, and then we'll perform a reboot and reconnected session. And then after that, we'll go back into Salesforce and we'll review the data that's been captured in the Salesforce case. Okay, so here we are in Salesforce. Your page layout might look different to mine. Obviously, they can be customized per organization. I have the ScreenMeet component on a separate tab, but in your configuration, it could be anywhere on the page layout. So we're going to start a remote support session. That's going to give us some key information that we need to get over to the customer. One of those pieces of information is a URL that contains a pin, and then the other one is the pin on its own. So depending on the engagement channel you have with the customer, if it's an email or through chat, you could send the link. If you're on the phone with them, it might be just easier to give them the pin. So let's switch over to the customer view. If you send them the link, obviously they'll click on the link and it will direct them to the website. The pin's already there and they'll get an on-demand download. If you're on the phone with them, you can tell them to open a browser and go to myhelpscreen.com where they will enter the PIN code. When they enter that code, they'll be prompted to download the file. So this file will not be installed on their machine and it won't leave behind at the end of the session. It will be removed. Once it's downloaded, the customer can open the file. They will then get a notification of what's happening in the session. So we started this in view only, so it's asking for them to grant permission for you to view the screen, and it's also saying that the session may be recorded. So when they click allow, they're agreeing to the session. When they connect, there'll be confirmation that the screen sharing has started and that the session has been recorded. So let's switch back to your view in Salesforce. Now the session is live, you can click on this Join Session button. It will open a tab in a browser. It's entirely browser-based for you. You don't have to log into a console or a different application. And as you can see, we're in the session and we have some tools over here that will help you during the support session. As we mentioned, this was being view-only mode. So the first thing we're going to do is have a look at some of the annotation tools. So I'll request annotation and the customer will be prompted to allow that action to take place. Once they've allowed that, you'll then have some annotation tools, starting with a laser pointer. Then we also have a paintbrush for drawing and a stamper as well, an arrow stamp. All self-explanatory, the laser pointer, as you see here on this white background, there's a laser pointer that's following my mouse around. With the paintbrush, it's a little bit more for annotating a particular area of interest. You can also change the color as well if you wish, if you want different colors on your annotation. You could delete and clear and undo drawings that you've made. And then finally, this sort of arrow stamper is more direct. So you know, if you want to close that window for me, and then they'll get that direct point to where that is. So those are the annotation tools available to you. Next, we're going to request remote control. And as with annotation, the customer will be prompted to allow that to take place. When remote control has been granted, obviously, as you can see here, I'm now driving the customer's machine on their behalf. It's important to note that the customer also has remote control. So if they were to interject with their mouse, then that would take the control away from you for that period while they're working on the mouse. So there are a number of features in here, and we have other training videos that go into these features in more depth, but I wanted to focus on the reboot and reconnect. And by the way, I should mention you can connect to Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android devices in the same method. But particularly with Windows devices, a reboot might be required after you've performed an installation or a patch or an upgrade of some sort. So within this Windows Tools menu, you have this reboot and reconnect. So we're going to reboot this machine. So during the reboot, you will see the message that the end user's device is disconnected. And this is because it's no longer on the network as it's rebooting. But when the machine comes back up and the customer logs back in, you won't need to start a new session. The session will re-establish. Also, during the reboot, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner here, you'll see there's a countdown timer of how long the session's been disconnected for. And you can extend that timeout if you wish. So for example, if you're doing a reboot and several updates are applying to the operating system, it may take longer than normal. So you can extend that timeout session out to make sure that the session will re-establish. Now the customer's logged into the machine, you can see that the session has been established. And again, I have full control of the customer's machine. So for the purposes of what we wanted to show in this video, that's the functionality within the remote support session that we intended to cover. So I'm going to close the session. You'll be presented with this survey form to rate the session, and this is really for ScreenMeet. So this will come to ScreenMeet, and our customer success team will be able to see if you've had issues or if everything's working as it should. If we go back into Salesforce, let's review some of the data that gets captured. So now we've had that session, if I just do a quick refresh on that case page, and I'll go back to my ScreenMeet component, you can see here we're capturing information that we had a ScreenMeet session. Also, if you remember, the session was set to be recorded. So that recording is on automatically. And this is where I can access that recording from. Now, my configuration allows me to download the recording or actually stream it from its cloud storage location. Your configuration might differ, but again, obviously you would select which option you want to view that recording, and also access to those recordings can be managed as well. The session information, if I expand on that, over here on the right-hand panel, this is really showing you a little bit more detail about the session, particularly more around the duration of the session, how long it lasted, and which agent started the session. And then we have a session log. So these logs, again, if I expand that out, will show the functions that were used during the session. So they'll show the initial startup of when you joined the session, but also the features that were used. And you can see here it will represent what we did. So we had the laser pointer, the remote control, and we did a reboot and reconnect. One other piece of information that we capture is the device information. So this is the hardware spec and operating system, so the hardware configuration and operating system configuration of the customer's machine. There's nothing personally identifiable in here. It's just the kind of information that you can see on screen, how much memory's in there, the type of operating system and patches that are on there. So that concludes what we wanted to cover in this session. And just a quick recap of what we did. We did a remote support session directly from Salesforce. We started the session with recording automatically enabled and in view-only mode. We showed the customer join flow. We demonstrated annotation and remote control functionality. We performed a reboot and reconnect and established the session. And then we had a look at the data that was captured back in Salesforce. I hope you found this video useful, and thank you for watching.